I mentioned in one of the videos about the four seals of Dhamma, and it's in here. There are four key elements. Life is suffering. We are going over the law of entropy. When we leave things alone, things get disorganized. So we have to keep on working. That requires energy, wisdom, compassion, all the tools that we can find. But since everything is impermanent, we need to get these things going all the time. One important discovery, I think in most of the religion, should get to this point that we think we are here because that's how I use our mind and we can think. But at the end, there's something, or there's a confinement in the mind that we cannot go over beyond the words and logic. When you realize that, that's awakening, and there we'll find there's no self, no me entity. There's awareness, and then you may find nirvana, the peace in stillness. That, to me, is the essence of Dhamma from the Buddhist point of view. And if we have this idea, well internalized, will bring out the wisdom and compassion. And since there are various people living in the world, I want to just capture two different approaches that I share here. One is related to the meditation. Like in my case, I went through the Vipassana 10-day meditation course dozens of times, and we go through how to pay attention to breathing and inner body sensation, and not to be caught up in the mind, because the sufferings are most likely related to having our ego, mind, trying to solve the problem, but we can't when certain things happen, like facing the inevitables. So to get away from that, like in the case of Vipassana, 10 days like going into the hospital of the mind, to clear up what's in the mind and to be able to see things as they are. And the idea is awareness and have equanimity. I use the word calm and quiet mind. It's not easy to have the discipline going on, but as you get used to it, have a good discipline, then we may find the peace, even the bliss, the sense of nirvana. When there's no self, when you realize everything is impermanent, and though suffering exists, we may find a way. So that's the process that I went through. This is mainly 2000, the major event that took place was. And out of that, I found those four types of wisdom became apparent. One is that I see, not all the time, but when the state is right, like even looking at the clouds or the flowers, there's wondrous phenomena happening all around us. And we ourselves is that example that we exist. Without thinking, we can move things and pick things up, walk, and the food get digested. Lots of miraculous things happen. And we start to realize and appreciate that. That's one type of the wisdom, or the way we see the compassion of the nature, if you call that. The other one is the sense of equality, which is everybody has the same essence, Dhamma, the law of nature manifesting. Me, you, flowers, tree, clouds, law of universe manifest. So there's a sense of equality. And the third wisdom is as if to look at yourself in the mirror. If we don't have a mirror, we just see things outside. There's no reflection. But as much as we go through meditation and be able to see the thought popping up and fading away, that's the notion that you start to see what's going on in the mind, as if there's two of you, the mind you and the you bigger than yourself or true self relating to this mirror situation. I mentioned about the eye of Eckhart. The eye I see the God is the God that sees me. So that's the notion of reflection. And we need to do that as we live, to see where we stand, what we do, and if we are keen and get the habit of it, and the discipline of it, and the skill of it, like we go through this meditation, then we get this wisdom to see ourselves better. And the last wisdom is related to evolution. As the will of universe may manifest in our living beings, we are evolving, and the force of evolution is the law of universe already there. Without that, we don't exist. Our ancestors don't evolve, and we get to this point. So it's a natural way of seeing things happen, of making things happen. So instead of us or the ego doing with the mind, there's a force of universe that is making things happen. And if we realize that, then without the self, but the law of universe, and the expression I have is that ride the wave of the universe, follow the laws of the universe, because that's the power, source of wisdom and compassion manifesting. Those are the four types of wisdom, and along with it is a sense of being with the law of nature, and the joy, and the blissful sensation where there's no self. It is internal, subjective experience, and that can happen if we go through this meditation process. So Zen has lots of elements, and along with it is the notion of the knowledge, how we use our mind. So let's call that as one example, say represented by Zen or meditation. But I have been sharing the idea of Shin Buddhism and Myokonin. Compared to the first one I mentioned, which seems to be more connected to our intellect, the brain, what I think, what we think, and how we think, and cause and effect. But when it comes to the Shin, or represented by Myokonin, which is this picture here, in their case, it's more feeling oriented the way I take it. What I mean by that is that the feeling of suffering, of course, that's one, but there's a feeling of relating to the law of nature that I was talking about previously. But this relationship is not through too much with the intellect, but the idea of Amida Buddha in case of Shin Buddhism. And what it means is that by saying Namu Amida Butsu, which means I throw myself for the vow of Amida Buddha to save me. So the notion of Amida Buddha is something like you are to let go of yourself because you cannot solve all the problem, and therefore let Amida to take care of you. And to me, Amida Buddha represents the law of nature or law of universe. It's manifesting already. We may not see it, but it's there. As I mentioned, that we exist like a miracle. With that source of miracle, if we let that Amida Buddha to take over, then the suffering is going to go away. So that's the notion from my point of view to explain simply the Shin Buddhism, or how the Myoho-ni shares their experiences. And there are lots of wonderful stories. It's actually Myoho-ni's wondrous nature of human being, is it means. But in their case, Amida Buddha, the notion of how I characterize here compared to this, looking at the suffering, letting the Amida to take care, and you are to go to Amida, which is come as you are, is the way Amida would say. Don't worry about all the things that you need to do, meditation and others even. So it's a different passage in a way, but let you to be and let go of it, which is kind of like a sense of no self I mentioned here. So you give out yourself, no ego to be replaced by Amida Buddha. And it may take time and energy to get to the point, but what I found by various Myoho-ni, Saichi was one example I shared already, but there are a bunch of more and I want to talk more about it. But they are connected to the sense of Amida, or law of nature, with a feeling, not too much with the intellect. As it happened, they do not use the intellect. Some of the Amida Myoho-ni couldn't read, and therefore they rely on their own view of the world without logic or the words as much, but more of a feeling. That's my sense. And since they also have the suffering, they just let go, easy way, without thinking. And there are many examples like that made this to happen. So as soon as they use Amida Buddha, even when they realized the suffering, the beginning of the suffering, they notice the suffering and then say Amida Buddha, and that is almost replacing me having a suffering to be replaced by Amida Buddha by calling Amida Buddha for Amida to save. So that's another process, and out of that comes joy and bliss. And that's the other approach. One is more intellect, and I want to call it, one is more of a feeling-based approach. But they all come to the same sense of nirvana, or peace and stillness, or bliss, or joy, as I depicted here. So, in summary, what I wanted to catch out here is that there are varieties of people. Some may approach in one way, the other may approach from the other. There may be multiple approaches, but those two are the examples that I thought characterizing. One may be more depending on the intellect, the other may be more depending on the emotion or feeling, because that's how they have lived their life. There's a habitual pattern related to that. In my case, I feel I have both ends of it. That's why I'm describing in those two approaches. And if I may spend a little more time, let me explain one thing. I had the problem of using this software to do this recording. And I couldn't record because I couldn't find the microphone. It was off. And it took 30 minutes to find it. This is a quick time. It was not easy. So in that case, I was using my brain, but I couldn't find it. There was a little annoyance or suffering, but I stayed calm, quiet, although that wasn't so easy. But going through and reading the steps one by one and checking carefully, I found the solution. So in that case, I was going through this. And if you cannot read and write, of course, that's not possible. So if you are one of those persons who are less inclined to check all the details and the steps, you may go into this process. But in that case of the microphone, and I don't know if there's any easy way to go through this process from this feeling approach. But after all, there's a suffering, there's a way out. And one of the answers for those who are not equipped to the computer, all that skills, may find that it's not necessary to have a microphone or recording. There's different way of living, and those people may be less bothered with those technological advancement, but have a simple life. Not to say which is good or bad, because the world has the population of people of different characters. So accordingly, there may be a way to come up with wisdom and compassion and still find the nirvana, a peace in stillness. Thank you.